Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. Today we have a special video. Recently a viewer reached out to buy a consulting call. This viewer, AJ, was new to Fishbowl and was especially interested in the Fishbowl database. We said sure, but how about instead of paying, we record it and put it on our YouTube channel for everyone to see. I figured all Fishbowl users would appreciate something like this, plus I get a lot out of these teaching moments as well. Thankfully for everyone, he agreed. Our student, AJ, was interested in how to get the most out of Fishbowl and possibly help with his company with reporting. In the lesson, I let AJ ask the questions, and I do my best impression of a professor. We break down the structure of the Fishbowl database, why it's called a relational database, and what the heck joins are supposed to do. Let's start the lesson in progress with our new student, AJ, Aleksa, and myself. Let's kind of get started. AJ,
Mhm.
how did you come to learn about Fishbowl? Tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah, it's a funny story actually. So I can give you my quick life overview, I guess. Um, just growing up, I've always been interested in computers, and I built my own computers. And
Sure.
basically, I got into data and everything through school. And right now, I'm in a master's of business analytics at Dominican University of California.
Awesome.
And I came to Fishbowl because someone that's in my class actually hired me as an intern, and one of his clients works with Fishbowl. They actually just got Fishbowl. I helped them with a data merge. They use this this like ancient database called Visual. And
Oh, I've actually heard of
oh,
that.
have
I've
you heard of
actually heard of
Visual?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of
So
Visual. Yep.
so I was logging in remotely to this computer that was running like Windows XP or Vista or something, and they told me, "Oh, be delicate with it so it doesn't blow up when you're when you're using it." And and I was basically doing a data merge to
Hmm.
Fishbowl from Visual, and and in my internship, I was basically made to do sales reports. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funny how I was doing it before on Fishbowl. I was using the export feature on Fishbowl, and
Uh-huh.
then making the reports based off of that.
In
And
Excel or something. Yeah.
Excel, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was funny. So I had met with someone from Fishbowl, and they said to me, they said the export feature actually isn't meant for
Reporting.
for reports,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
basically. And then he showed me the data module, and because I was wondering, I couldn't see the date completed or the date fulfilled or anything like that.
Because it doesn't have it. It's not. Wasn't
Exactly, it
intended for
doesn't.
that. Yeah.
Exactly, it doesn't have it, and it's not a part of the exports. So he showed me the data module, and he said, "Oh, it uses SQL or SQL, whichever." And then after that, I was messing with it. The most basic SQL stuff I had done was the select, asterisk from a table.
Yeah.
And then I was looking on YouTube, and I came across your series. And then after that, I've just been practicing. I practiced along with like the stuff you showed, and I was able to make some reports. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's the story.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Well, I'll share a little bit about my background.
Mhm.
Because only because you probably don't know all of it, but if you've seen the videos, maybe you kind of piece together some of that history. But I kind of fell into Fishbowl in 2009. In 2009, I was just a contract IT guy. Previously, I was working for a public company in IT. That company was called Spy Optics, a sunglass company here in Southern California. And I was the youngest person there, like just 20 years old. And somehow, because I was just interested in websites, I mean, it was funny because I was trying to convince them to have like a Facebook page. I was trying to convince them to have a Twitter. This is how early internet was, and there I am, 20. It's like, guys, why don't you have this? You're a brand, you got people, you got to tell your story. I don't know. But one of my jobs was to maintain the ERP system, or not maintain, but just keep everybody happy with it. And eventually, as kind of like needs progressed, and my previous job, I did a lot of database work just for support, right? And I was like, well, I mean, this thing's a database. I'm sure it can't be that hard, right? And I, cut my teeth on Great Plains, right? And that's when I was like, okay, I really like this. I really like being able to see the ebbs and flows of the business through the database. And because it was a public company at the same time, it's like, oh shit, like these results will end up on at the SEC and stuff like that. It was really cool. But left that for greener pastures, and was doing just contract IT, and a medical device firm that I was contracting at had bought Fishbowl like 6 months prior, and I just showed up, and the Fishbowl consultant was there, and we got to talking, and yeah, the rest was history. Just helping that company out, building reports just from the ground up. Just like I know nothing about Fishbowl, but it has a lot of what a ERP system would have. It's not a full ERP because it doesn't have a chart of accounts or a balance sheet, and it was just something like, okay, this is really approachable. One person can really understand the whole thing, and it wasn't intended to be this way. It just kind of ended up spending more and more hours and more projects, and then I got my second customer, my third, my fourth, my fifth, and then now I run my own firm here. We've got a small team of approximately 7, and yeah, we do this query work all the time. And in fact, I was just coming off another call with another client that needed some database surgery, and yeah, been doing this ever since 2009. And so it's been systems and software and process. It's always up my alley. So I'm happy to lend my expertise in this kind of unique manner, because we do get these kind of requests all the time, and it's kind of like, yeah, we could teach you, but really in a better of a context of as a paying client. But I don't know, just thought, let's try something different, because hey, we haven't put something on our YouTube in a while, so let's see if we can get some good content without having to spend a whole lot of time doing it. So that's what we're going to try to do. So AJ, you tell me, you're the student, I'm the teacher. What you've seen the previous videos, what do you would like to get some explanation on or instruction on in terms of the Fishbowl database, how to work it, that sort of thing, and then we'll see what we can, because I only have an hour, and we'll see how far we can go with this.
Right. Yeah, of course. Well, I just want to say firstly, thank you for sharing your knowledge with everyone on YouTube and everything. I'm really thankful for it. So out of all the videos, I've watched through all your videos. I actually just recently watched your video on the custom fields, and I got one of them working, which I was really happy about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I watched your custom fields, and then which was Fishbowl's new update, where they did the new custom fields, and you were explaining the past history about it. And it was funny, I just wanted to mention, I was using the 2017 HTML database architecture layout, and I was just on a call with Fishbowl yesterday, and they gave me their most updated recent one for 20.5 or something.
Yeah.
So he said, oh, you've been doing the best you can working with that 2017 layout, but here's a
honestly, I don't even use it. There's and we'll show you some database tools today. There's some open source ones that have autocomplete, because I'm sure you've been using. Have you just been using the data module?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna go in there, but because you're a little more advanced, I think we should use the open source tool that's available for MySQL databases, and then I can show you some of that, how we can get some of these, Aleksa's seen it. I don't know if we'll do it today, because it's a bit different today, where people talk what they want, and I'm just like, just typing it out, just banging it out. I was like this, and they're like, oh, I just finished talking. You've already got the query.
It's pretty amazing to watch.
So yeah, I've been looking at this database for a long time now, so I have a really good idea. And that's the thing, I think that's what a lot of these, because I was teaching Aleksa and teaching some other people on the channel, I forget. Honestly, I just forget how hard it was in the beginning. AJ, there wasn't even that HTML thing that you found. There wasn't even that in 2009. There was just nothing. So it was literally just me, imagine just printing out, okay, I'm going to hit this button in Fishbowl, but before I do that, I'm going to print out the database records that I'm looking at, and then I'm going to hit the button, and then I'm going to watch it, and then print the paperwork again, and just lay it out on the floor and see what it is. Because back in the day, this is when I started, because we don't have 32-inch ultra wide monitors, so I'm still printing this stuff out just to see what's going on. So it's a lot. In some ways it's gotten better, in some ways it hasn't gotten past that point, but we'll see. So anyway, enough, I guess, jabbering. What do you want to see first?
So
what's the first lesson?
I wrote down some topics. One of the biggest ones that I was interested in was the joins in Fishbowl, and I guess joins in general in SQL. So I was just having trouble. I was able to basically go into the logs like you had shown and copy a lot of the pre-made Fishbowl stuff.
Yep.
And so that was extremely helpful for me to just begin seeing how the commands run, but I still didn't really understand the joins. So I think it would be helpful for me to review that.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna pull this up. What I'm showing on the screen real quick. So it's called Heidi SQL, and all the time I type in Heidi and it's like Google says, do you want Heidi Klum? No, I don't want Heidi Klum. Heidi SQL is a great database tool. So if you guys Google it, just download it. It's a great tool, except they have ads on the, go away, please. They've got ads. It's great. When you connect to the Fishbowl database, you'll need the IP address, you'll need the port, you'll need the username and password. And if you go to the Fishbowl wiki, just go over there real quick, and you do the ODBC instructions page, they'll give you most of that data. Like the port you use is 3305, the username is gone in phishing, and that is a read-only username that you can access the Fishbowl database. You don't need to actually set up the ODBC unless you want to use it with Excel or something, and that is some executive crack you can get into. Is just get Excel raw data so that people can just do pivots, and if we have enough time, we might do that. But yeah, so for when you get Heidi SQL set up and you get connected to it, it'll ask you for those three things. You can get that off the Fishbowl wiki page. Download it. When you get set up, go to the Fishbowl wiki for the details, gone phishing, 3305, and the IP address of your computer or the Fishbowl server, so your own computer or something else. But the Fishbowl documentation they send out, there's usually like a diagram, like an entity relation diagram. It kind of looks like this.
Oh, I've seen it actually. Yeah,
they have some. This is probably a better one, and I'm not going to show you an exact one, but basically it says. And by the way, never do this. This is the kind of stuff they would teach you in school. It's like, if you had this data, do this, and I'm like, no, like
they actually did. They did teach me that in school.
Yeah, they're like, it's like, here's your data, make a database, and they want you to learn a bunch of different strategies and almost like anti-patterns and then actual good design patterns. And there's a lot of reasons to do certain things. There's a lot of reasons not to do certain things. At the end of the day, a lot of those design decisions were based upon, spinning magnetic drives, where the drives were really slow. So we had to keep data really compact and accessible and reduce the amount of storage and things like that. Things are a bit different now. I'm sure you kind of heard me talk about it a little bit with the Fishbowl custom fields, and now it's all JSON. That's just a practicality. Like, drives have gotten faster, so why do we have this data all spread out a bunch of different places? Let's just put it all in one place, so we have it. But a lot of those diagrams, but back to the diagram, but the diagram really describes a lot of different things, and you don't really see it, but if I get my annotation tool here, I'll start drawing. Right, depending on the direction of these arrows, and they're specific, but I don't exactly know what they are. We've got this base product, right? And then we've got like a product color and then the actual color, right? So what these links are is essentially hey, on this side, this value or this column links to this thing on this other side, right? And that's why when they talk about the joins, they're always talking about left and right. Right, your left join and your right join, right? So from these diagrams, you get a better idea of like both like the nature and the structure of the data. Like to me, in my mind, it's a little bit like both like Play-Doh. Like at certain points, you've got your Play-Doh and you stamp out a cube or a triangle or whatever. Like you're just always going to get that, right? And eventually, that's how the database understands how this data is structured, and it also allows the database to understand. It's like, hey, I'm not going to let you put in a product with a color that doesn't exist, because the designer, and this is where we'll probably go back to like somebody at Fishbowl, designed it to be this way. Why? Well, we don't know, right? There's usually not like a nice little paragraph to say like, we did this because we hate you, or we did this because we had technical debt and we couldn't find a way to do it. That happens all the time with databases. You just go with it, and eventually you're just gonna, you know what? It was a good idea at the time, but 10 years later, we hate it, right? And that's okay. But a lot of the database structure is built upon this kind of model where it's like we've got records in one place, and then in order to not have duplicates in another place, we're going to have a whole separate table for that piece of data, right? In the example of your old system, right? What was the name?
Visual.
Not your Visual. Yeah, I thought you said Fishbowl.
Oh no.
Visual. In Visual, which I understand that to be just a regular database platform, right? The database tools, like, it really depends on like the quality of the structure. It depends on the designer at the time, right? So sometimes you might see duplicates of information that could be in another place. So you might have seen that in your source data. I see that in the 90s. It was very common to have just like one table be like the sales orders, and then like both the data that would happen once gets duplicated with the data that happens multiple times, like the line items. So it'd just be like, you got like 90 columns wide, and then for every order with 10 lines, 10 rows deep, and then over and over. So you get the customer name duplicated like 17 million times, and it's like, guys, like, okay, all right. It was, again, design decisions. So a lot of when we kind of go through these different structures or workflows, hopefully some of these designs, some of these previews don't really come up with much, come up with that. And the nice thing about it is the tool that you got from Fishbowl, like the diagram, there's software that will go and say like, okay, well, I'm just going to look at what the database has for structure and then make documentation from it, right? That's kind of like the lazy way of doing it, right? So I don't have the blueprint for the house, but I'm just going to go in here with the camera and see what's here, right? You only see what's visible. You only see what's defined, but it's usually good enough. You won't ever get the why, but you'll know that the building has 4 houses. This table has 4 tables, and there's a door between one room to another, right? And you don't know why, but you'll figure it out over time. So when we're talking about joins, a lot of it just reflects the structure that the system has inherently, right? In one of the videos I talked about, can you see Fishbowl, AJ?
Yes.
In one of the conversations I had earlier, the structure of the data will be pretty straightforward once you kind of take a look at it. We have data that only occurs once, like the customer, the date schedule, the admin, carrier. This address occurs once, the ship to occurs once, and et cetera, et cetera. The sale order number occurs once, et cetera. So from an overall perspective, like this kind of like, I'm calling it the header, right? There's no body of certification that says that's what a header is. But I'm just going to call it that, and is different and separated from the lines right down here. And the line information is we've got the number, the description, the quantity, and the unit measure, and the price. Those occur multiple times, and those relate to that sales order, right? So the joke is, there's some, I'll have to find like the Reddit post or something like that, but it was the joke of how like a professor had put out a job ad for a research intern for their thing. It's like, one of your duties is going to be to maintain a database. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I know SQL, I know Microsoft SQL, I can do that. No problem. So they apply, the professor's really happy. They go and say like, okay, here's the database, drops a stack of paper, right? And the stack of paper is just sheets of paper. And it's like, what is this? It's like, this is the database. It's like, you gotta like, I'm going to have new records, and you're gonna have to find a way to put it in this database. And it's like, so how do I do this? It's like, oh, I have a Word doc. So this professor knew what a database was, that it has stores data and it prints it out in a structured manner, but literally made a physical database out of paper, but not on the computer or anything. But it had data like, the patient information, the data about like each time the patient came in to get a test done and the results of that. That was the database, right? And people can get really confused about what a database is, because when you're looking at it already prepared for you, right? And that's what the professor got mixed up on. Someone showed him a database and he just saw this and thought, well, I can do that in Word, and that's as far as they got. They never got back to like, well, how is this data actually being stored? Oh, we got to put it on the computer first, and then go from there. You could even just in our notepad real quick, header, X, Y, Z, detail, A, B, C, whatever. Kind of like what you saw in the Fishbowl exports, right? Like that is structure, right? Like no one's like, I decided that that's the structure of what I wanted, and that is how it's going to be. And how I explain that to other people, can be really difficult. And that's why we ended up with more computer systems and software to store the ever amounts of growing business data and transactions and things like that into something that, hey, is actually readable and understandable, right? So behind this screen is more tables, but let's just keep it down to two. A sales order header and a sales order detail, right? Something that occurs once per order and something that occurs multiple times per line. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that sales order, and then we're going to look at how to make that join and how that kind of makes sense, right? Cool. So I'm going to pull up the SQL tool here, and I already know where I'm going to go, and that's probably the first part that I think people get kind of confused, because you can kind of see here on the list of tables, we got 327 tables to look at. Yeah, there's not really. I mean, this is better than other ERP systems. Like other ERP systems, like I joke. This lady that puts up this website is Victoria Uden. I'm sure she's a nice lady. I never talked to her, but I end up making fun of GP, but with her documentation. The table name for unposted work transactions header is SOP 10100. The detail is SOP 10200.
Oh my goodness.
So imagine having numbered and indexed table names instead of what we have here.
Makes Fishbowl look beautiful.
It makes Fishbowl. Yeah, and honestly, GP was built in an era where, table names could only be 8 characters. Column names could only be 10 characters or something like that. When you have those kind of limitations, you get creative, and this is what they end up coming out with.
So would they have a table that has the name stored for the column headers? Does that make sense? Or
no. Like
they just have to know it.
They just have to know it. Like
Wow.
This was, and it sucks because, we take it for granted that we can type, as many characters as we want for a lot of these things now. Now, there are limitations nowadays for SQL, and you honestly don't want to have, I don't know if you've seen this before, but a lot of companies that never thought about item numbers as part of their like business structure, well, when like QuickBooks or other systems, they'll say, give us an item number. They don't know, like, oh, red, Ford water pump thing, 2008, and that's the item number, just like a description. Eventually it cuts them out. It's like, okay, buddy, like you only get 100 characters. Like that's it. Like if in 100 characters you can't uniquely identify this, like what are you doing? And so yeah, so it goes both ways. But that's when I come across companies that need data out of GP and they need to get it over to Fishbowl, and they can't find anybody to help them, I'll call them. We'll work through something. I'll connect to the database and pull stuff out. But yeah, it's going to other systems and other designers, I go like, I can't be mad, but I'm just really surprised that it's this bad, you know? And that's why you'll see in later probably videos why aliasing or giving a name to these things. So I'll probably say, I want this table, but call it the work table, or I want this table, but I'm going to call it temporarily the work detail table. You know, that's an amazing thing that SQL can do, that just helps us mere mortals understand what's going on, right? So Fishbowl. So where do we start? Okay, well, honestly, just take a look. You know, sales order. Let's go S, right? Scrolling down, S.
This is actually really nice because I was going into Fishbowl and clicking on their table section, and
that's one way of doing it.
Right.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. So in this tool, this is a full database management tool that I wouldn't say professional, but really just anybody would use to maintain MySQL. So this is not a Fishbowl specific tool. This is a MySQL tool, right?
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna click on SO here, and see these tabs up here? They're really nice. They show you the structure of the table. They don't tell you why. MySQL does have a way to comment on these columns, but of course they're not here. Like Fishbowl's not going to put that, right? Because they don't have it themselves. But you know, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you look at the name, you go, okay, that's pretty obvious. Build to name, I get it. The comment would be build to name. How, you know, there's a lot of other like explanations that really can't fit in a comment anyway. But this is the sales order table, right? And this is just, I can't really tell you why, but just by experience, this is the table where all the data is going to be. Now, how do I know? How do I know for sure? Well, you can preview it. You click on the data table, a data tab, and you'll see a lot of cool stuff in here.
Wow.
Right? You see all the data that this database has.
Right.
And it goes for, how many columns do we have? 65 columns. So it's quite wide, right, in terms of columns. It's all here.
Are the keys up there, Israel? So the green keys are they relating to other tables in the entire structure?
Okay, I can tell that you probably took a couple of classes on databases. Yes, that's exactly what that is.
Right.
That's exact. And this tool, it indicates the yellow key as the primary key.
Okay.
And that the green key means that there's a foreign key link.
Okay, that's really nice because that was not in the data module. I kind of had to.
It wouldn't be.
No,
yeah.
Right.
But Fishbowl is not that bad, right? If you see something with the word ID, likely there's a table for it. So, for example, let's take this carrier ID, right? The way I think about it is like, okay, I'm gonna drop the ID off. There's probably a carrier table with an ID column in it that if I match the two, I'll get the carrier name, right? That's how I think. Well, that's only because I've seen this a lot, and most of the time, database designers just do not want to be inconsistent. You'll get into a lot of trouble down the road if you're working with a platform or a software system that is really inconsistent. It's just like you're just getting death by paper cut every time you're thinking about how to go from one place to another. But anyway, we'll continue. So if you wanted to see what those relationships look like, we can go back to the table here and click on foreign keys. Now, the name don't really pay attention to, but the columns in the reference table, there you go. That's how those database design tools or documentation software will figure out that, hey, the type ID goes to this table called SO type and that foreign column of ID. You see that?
I do. So this one you're looking at here, this is all the foreign keys that are in SO table.
Yep.
And they're okay, and then they're linking. Oh, and actually shows you where it goes to.
Yeah.
On every. Oh, that's really helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, they're not. They haven't touched the data module since it came out. Almost 5 years now. When it came out, remember there was a version of Fishbowl that didn't have the data module, and I had to write all the reports that customers needed in iReport, which I don't know if you've had.
Yeah. I heard about that actually in my call yesterday with Fishbowl. He was mentioning about that tool, but I had no idea how to set it up. So
Right. It's not easy. It's not fun, but you can do it. And, a lot of the third-party consultants, make it work so that we can make the design reports in Fishbowl. And there's another conversation for that. But this is how like a lot of the tools say, like, hey, when I get the currency, there's a currency table, and on this side, we call it the currency ID, and then we go from there. And in database structure, there's a lot more things you can do to it. Like, I think if we just, I'm gonna change the table, but follow with me.
Quick question too, Israel.
Yeah.
So the _AUD tables, what are those?
Those are the audit tables.
Oh, the audit tables.
Meaning, all new inserts and updates go into there.
Oh.
We used to have deletes, but then for performance reasons, we don't have deletes in there anymore. But the initial insert and the initial and the subsequent updates, the data copies go there. That's what the new audit button in Fishbowl does, is it reads the data off of those tables and sees what's going on. So every version of a sales order you're making modifications to will have a copy over there.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get there.
I think I understand.
So I went over here to the part table, right? And I'm going to show you something where databases can be used to do the same thing. In the sales order table, everything was kind of like one-to-one, right? Take a notice of this thing called the AS account. We're joining where we have foreign key relationships to them multiple times. In this case, 5 times. Why?
So we're in the part table, and we have foreign keys to the same table multiple times.
And that table is the accounting system account table, or just like the general ledger.
Maybe
it feels like
with QuickBooks.
It is with QuickBooks.
Is it with QuickBooks? Oh.
It is with QuickBooks. Okay, so I'll give you a hint. So they're just right here, like the adjustment account, the scrap account, the inventory account, the cost of goods account, the variance account. All of those need a specific value, not because there's only one record in the accounting table account, is that we need a specific one over there, and we don't want to have the wrong one. Like, that's why you can have multiple foreign keys for this sort of thing across the same table. So it's like, okay, I can go to that other table, AS account, 5 times, 5 different ways, because there's 5 different purposes. Right? And then one more example, and then we'll actually go to an actual join. We'll go to the customer table. Customer, there we go. And then you'll see this sort of situation. Yeah, here we go. Now, I'm gonna ask you, why would we do that?
So we have a parent ID in the customer table. Oh, and it's linking to the customer table again?
Yeah. It's not wrong. It's actually a good design.
It's a good design. Maybe it's parent ID. The parent ID maybe is unique, right? And then the foreign customer is multiple customers, maybe?
Okay, so what happens, so I'll tell you, what happens is that in QuickBooks, they have a functionality called customer jobs, or parent-child jobs, or customers. So you can have a customer that has children customers under it.
Oh.
So the child says, like, my parent needs to be another customer, and I'll just slot under it, right? And so I know that I don't have like a phantom parent that doesn't exist. I'm going to have Fishbowl decided to have a foreign key constraint to itself, so that it doesn't have like a child that's orphaned, basically. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say, but that's basically what we're dealing with here.
Is that the
right?
database term?
Yeah, well, yeah, why not? But it enforces good data structure at the database level, because remember, there's software writing on top of the database.
Right.
So the database is like, okay, well, this is my structure, and I'm going to enforce it. So if you're giving me data or changes to data that doesn't make any sense, I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to let you do that. right? That's ultimately what databases are for, is like, we're not going to go put text or alphanumerics in a column called int because it's only going to take an integer, right? I'm not going to put a date inside of my credit limit because that's not how it's supposed to work, right? That's why with databases, we can really guarantee that if I put in an apple and later I'm not going to get a banana, right? Because that was the apple column, right? You can't put bananas in there. That's not the same thing, you know. Or in this case, let's make that a little clearer. I put an apple, I'm never going to get tomato, right? The vegetable. I shouldn't have picked that one. Let's say a zucchini, right? Apple versus zucchini, right? This is the zucchini column. I can only put zucchinis in here. This is the apple column. I can only put apple columns. That's how we're going to live together, right? That's why we don't end up, you know, accidentally giving somebody $1 million because somebody messed up the columns and put in the wrong data, and somebody down the road interpreted it wrong and said, okay, well, your bank balance is $1 million, so I'm going to allow you to do that. I mean, that happened. That has happened. I literally had that problem this morning where, anyway, I won't go into detail. It's not a bank, but those sort of things can kind of happen with databases that you're like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what 4477 means as a date, so I'm not going to even let you put it in. Sorry, you know. Back to the sales order table, and we can kind of continue. I'm sorry if I feel like I'm rambling a lot, but
oh no, you're not. I completely understand. It actually makes me think that when I'm exporting things out of Fishbowl, sometimes the dates come through as just, they look like numbers, but it's actually, I think, Excel's format for dates, and
yeah, that's called Excel ODate.
Excel ODate, right? And so I was wondering. I mean, this is just kind of off topic, but I was wondering how to convert it so it would just come through as a date instead of that format. I mean, it's not a huge deal to change it, to be honest, but
yeah. So you get like a 39456, right?
Okay. Right.
And then
yes.
and then that in Excel that represents, like, yeah. There's again, they made a decision when they were making OG Excel, like Excel 1.0. I think before it was a Microsoft product, that was the right way of doing dates. And that if you wanted a partial, like a timestamp, like 1 p.m., that it was a fraction of that whole number.
Oh.
So again, like design decisions.
Oh, I see.
Back in the day, like they had we're talking about like 50 megabyte hard drives, half 512 kilobyte floppy disks, you know.
Also, they can only put in the numbers to represent all those dates and times.
Yeah, so then we
space.
can save space. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Basically. So anyway,
so
go ahead.
One more question is just so I see you're talking about the data types, and so each column or I think each field, it's called, right, technically, has a data type set to it. So let's say, for a custom field, for example, which I put in actually recently, I set it to date. So does that custom field column field that's not set completely to date, right? That's just some.
Okay, so we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So back in the day, what Fishbowl would do is, like, if you had like a number, in this case they call it decimal, so you'd have a table called custom decimal. Or if you had like a whole number, like not fractional, you'd have custom integer or custom int.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that way the system was storing all of these custom values in their correct storage types, right? And it had about 5 of them: custom varchar long, custom decimal, custom integer, custom set for like drop down lists and selections. So that's all right. The custom timestamp, that's the 5th one. And you'd have to, if you wanted to get a single value that related to a single custom field to a single like record, like let's say a sales order, salesperson, commission rate, whatever, you have to join to that table and get exactly that row, right? But if you have like 1 custom field, it's not a big deal. If you've got 5 custom fields, it's annoying. If you got 10 custom fields, okay, it's going to take you a few minutes. If you got 100 custom fields, right, it's going to take a long ass time to get to that data. So instead of storing it the right way, which is like the 5th nomial form, that's a specific to database world language,
Mhm.
but like everything's got a home. And if you want to have instead of having to, because the other way that other systems do it for custom fields is that they add a 66th column. They just add more columns. Salesforce works that way. Like a lot of CRMs work that way. 30 seconds on CRMs. CRMs are just a fancy database. It's just a fancy Excel, right? Because it allows you to, there's someone to go in here and go, add new column.
No.
Right? Now, this won't work because actually, I think it will work. So let's ignore that. So but you get the idea, right?
Yes.
That you can go wide on a table
Mhm.
or go deep on another table
Another table
because
to
you
store it.
to store it, right?
Gotcha.
So what Fishbowl decided to do is like, okay, instead of having a really deep structure for rows of custom fields, we're gonna collect them all and then put them into one field called custom fields that happens to be JSON. Are you familiar with JSON?
I'm not. Well, when I was watching your custom field, I remember I was watching you do it, and you went to like a JSON beautifier or something. Yeah, exactly. This is when I was watching your video, and actually, when I first was looking at it, before I looked up your video and found it, because I was looking on your channel to see if I could find something, I thought they were dictionaries, which is what I thought the custom field was when I was looking at it. Like a key value pair.
Yeah, that's basically that's what it is, and people people get really complex with it. Now, Fishbowl's structure of custom fields works for them because they needed to both say the name and the ID and the type, so that they know how to treat it. But for us, we're just gonna say like, I want the value of the name key in my output. Right. That's effectively what that custom field by name, like keyword, is being done to pull it out. So Fishbowl just this field becomes a kitchen sink of extra data, and the reason why it's important is because it's close to the rest of the record. We don't need to spend it sounds like not a lot, but when you need to do it for 1,000 records,
right,
we save the 10 to 100 milliseconds per record because we're down to nanoseconds because it's like right next door. It's column 65, like it's right there. But there's some other downsides because then you got to go like, okay, well, I got to go inside it and like piecemeal a bit of the data that I want out of it. But when you're trying to minimize time working with the database, you'll do this just so that you can speed up loading the screen. Because to them it's like, okay, it's a fire hose, right? It's just like, okay, you want custom fields, you get all of it. I don't care. Like you just like whether you want it or not. But most of the time when you're dealing with Fishbowl on this side of the world, you don't care. You've got it, right? But yeah, back in the day, we had to do joins for that.
Right.
But let's finally get to the next part. I feel like we've been going back and forth, so I don't know how useful this video is going to be for a lot of people, but that's okay. I think you're getting a lot of value out of this.
I am. Thank you.
So this is the sales order table, right? And we've looked at it. Cool. We see that we've got like things like the customer ID, which if we go follow that structure, we'll find the customer, right? And now we have another field here, another table called sales order item.
I'm familiar with that one actually because
you looked at it already, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to join sales order item. Right. And I'm sure you've seen this before, but what we're going to do is select SO star from SO, and that's it.
And that's all the columns in SO, right?
Yeah. This is so I'm saying I want all the columns from the SO table, and just print them all out. And now, and this it's not much different than what this is. This is the same thing.
Got it.
So now what I want to do is maybe just the number column, right? Okay, cool.
Okay.
We're good. We got one thing, 52 rows. Great. Now, I want to sales order item, and I'm going to put a semicolon there so that my tool runs two queries at the same time, right? It's like, I want this plus this, right? I was like, just, how do I get it to do that? Like, okay, well, it's really easy. So what we're going to do, select from SO, we're going to join SO item on SO item.SOID because there's an SO.ID on this side. So when I was training some people back in the day, like 10 years ago,
Mhm.
I was like, just move the dot. Like move the dot. Like just move this dot over there, and that's
Oh.
probably what you're gonna get. So a lot of
that's clever. Mhm.
a lot of the times it's just like that's like what I'm thinking. To not even look that up because I don't even need to think. I just they were structured enough to keep that consistent to make that work. So if I wanted to join the customer, join customer on customer.id equals so dot. Oh, that's probably customer ID. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Oh wow, it fills it in for you too, huh? On the
Yeah. This tool fills it in. This tool has that. That's where when you're working with just a text editor,
yeah,
you're not working with any help. Like nothing's helping you.
yeah,
But
right. So, yep,
these
that's what I was,
but these database tools, they get it. They're like, okay, well, I saw that you typed in SO dot and there's a space behind you.
Mhm.
So you probably just want to talk about the SO table. So what I'm doing is just literally control space and then it pops out the little window. I'm like, yes.
Oh, it has the type right next to it too.
It has a type and I go
That's
customer.
super nice.
There, okay.
The colors are awesome too. I mean, that's
Yeah, I mean, Fishbowl data module, the data module is really only good for like pasting it in
Mhm.
and then just getting the result out so I can deliver it to a customer.
Huh.
It's like, here, I put the query in there, go find it, run it, and go to town.
It's funny. Yeah, I was working in it basically trying to write queries, and funny thing is you do Control Z to undo something, and then Control Y in Fishbowl is to remove a whole row. The whole
Yeah,
whole,
the
I was
the
like,
auto
oh my God.
the tools that the text editor there is a bit weird, a bit wonky. Everything in Java is a bit weird, but hey,
Oh.
it's how it is. But
Gets
anyway,
the job done.
it does get the job done. So I'm gonna get rid of this for now, just to not confuse us too much. But go back to what we were doing earlier. So num,
Mhm.
right? And then we'll do so item star, right? I'll give myself another semicolon here.
Oh, actually, I have a question, Israel.
Go
So
ahead.
when you're saying join, what join is that? Is that what? I guess I'm asking you, what's default join? What is that considered?
It's an inner join.
An inner. Oh, okay. Oh, so
This is the same as this.
as just join. Okay, got it. See, that's another part I was really confused about because I was thinking there were different joins that I didn't know.
No,
That
it's
I
just that you can just do that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's just a shorthand. A lot of database systems understand it. Much older database systems, when they came out, they would force you to write the word inner join.
Oh, okay.
So now more modern systems is like, we don't need that word. We understand what you mean. But the inner join means like, hey, I've got a record from SO,
Mhm.
and and if there's records from sales order item, I want them both. But if there's nothing for that sales order, because maybe there's just an empty sales order, then I don't want it at all. That's why it's an inner join. So I want the records that both match from both sides.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually thinking about the Venn diagram. In that Venn diagram, it would be, so it's the inner join. So it's in the middle, right? Of it?
Yeah, the
So
union
it's
of both.
The union of both. So it's only if they both have
Data match.
A match for each other, right?
Yep, exactly. No, you're exactly right. So I'm going to run this.
Okay.
So there's my sales order by itself. Oop, I got logged out of Fishbowl. Here's the sales order item table by itself, and then here's my custom query, right?
Mm-hmm.
With both.
Hmm.
You see that? And notice it. See how it says 52R for rows and one column, 132 rows and 34 columns, and then basically both.
Oh.
So notice how now essentially I've got more rows and more columns. How did that work? Well, look at this. I've got a sales order number and I've got three. Oh, that's what it is. I've got the baking soda, salt, and oatmeal chocolate chip. And it duplicates the sales order number so that I know that it's all tied together.
I think I'm understanding. So the 35 columns was because you had the one column that got added. Oh, because you added it on the part number, the number.
Yeah, I wanted
right?
sales order number plus the 34 of the sales order item.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And so it's duplicating those 52 or the 52 records from the SO over the 132 records you have
from the sales order item.
From the items.
Because that's what I asked for.
Gotcha. And then it's joining that column onto onto the new. Okay, so that's why it has 35 columns then, right?
Because the projection, they call this projection, but they call it, I usually just call it select, is like what I want is different from how I got there. And that was the magic and the whole like mind explosion of like database systems, because back in the day they would structure it in a hierarchy where it's like Ford and then customers and then transactions and then cars, right? Like the filing system was literally in that organization. Well, let me put it this way. It was Ford and then region and then state and then dealership and then customer and then car, right? That's how the database systems in the past would work, right? You literally had to traverse all of those paths to get there.
Oh, there's no connection in between.
There was no connection in between, right? There was no relation.
Right.
That was what broke free data, was the fact that we now had relationships.
Oh, and that's why it's called a relational database then, right?
That's why it's called a relational database.
Okay, that makes
because databases used to be just based on hierarchy only. Hierarchy only. Like you had to follow the hierarchy. So if you wanted to know which car, you had to go traverse all that hierarchy to get there.
You had to go through every single.
Now we still have joins, and that's part of it. But now if you just wanted to look at the cars, you can, and not look at all the transactions that the customers had made to get to the cars, right? So that's where databases got like just, I wouldn't say a bad rap, but computer systems, like when they would crash, like would be a big problem, because the structure was so mangled that you couldn't piece things together to figure out. Now this still happens with databases, I'll mind you, but if you lose the customer table, I was like, well, we can probably fill it in from the sales order table, right? Because they had a lot of duplicates from there anyway. Anyway, that's separate. But back to the joins. Let me make this a little simpler. So I'm going to just do description and also item, quantity to fulfill, which is the quantity ordered, and we'll do that again, right? So sales order, 52 rows, 1 column. Sales order item, 132 rows, 34 columns. Now here's my result. I've got the sales order number, the description, the quantity to fulfill, and now, well, if I had logged into Fishbowl, log back in.
Your Fishbowl looks fancy.
Well, it's the new Fishbowl.
Oh, okay.
They updated the logo. And we'll pick an order here. Let's do 56, right? Great, 3 lines. So if we go grab that ID and try to find it, scroll. There we go.
Oh, so those are the 3 line items that are in that single SO.
So sales order is a header because it only occurs once, and sales order item can have multiple things. Does that make sense?
That's what yeah.
So now I'm going to make a new sales order.
So Israel, would you say just a quick question? Would you say the unique identifier for, let's say, a single record, it would be the number plus the description, right, of the product?
No. The sales order item has its own primary key.
Has its own primary key?
Yep.
Oh, so okay. Right.
SO ID as SO ID and as SO item. Because you're really not supposed to have these things with the same column names. Ooh, I typed something wrong.
I guess I was thinking about it because I remember reading about
comma.
Oh,
yeah. At the top.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
I remember reading about it said like a composite key, so it was like a combination.
You can do that, but it can be a bit of a bad design most of the time.
Okay, that's
you
good to know.
can have a constraint that says I only want unique values of these conditions, but a composite key is nobody really needs to do that. It complicates the lookups and things like that, because then you need the whole value of the composite key on the foreign table to relate back, and that could be just a lot of data you don't really need to copy.
Gotcha.
A number is super easy. It's like byte.
Got it.
Instead
that's
of like
that's really helpful
80,
actually.
14 bytes for the same 8 character thing that you're copying all over the place.
Gotcha. So they each have their own primary key in a way?
Yep. That's what Fishbowl structure is. It's like all the tables, if they're data tables or not lookup tables or reference tables, will have their own primary key to say like this sales order table has its own primary key and the sales order item has its own primary key, right? And that there's a shared value. So that's why when you SO item, that's why they match, right? Because on this side of the world, there's a 3, and on this side of the world, there's a 3, and okay, boom. That's it. That's why in the diagrams, they have those lines everywhere.
Yes.
But usually when you click on them, it tells you like what is on this side and what's on that side, right? The left and the right comes in not on the diagram, but when you're actually writing the query. Because I'm starting from sales order, I'm not starting from sales order item. I'm starting my journey in New York. I'm not starting my journey in California, right? So this you could call this the left side, and this is the right side.
That would be the table A, and then table B is.
So now notice how and we're getting to the end of the time because I got a meeting right after this.
Yeah.
Notice how I created this table named 1058.
Yes.
Right. So if I sort this, it's not in this result. Now why? Why is this not in the result? I see it. It's not there.
Because.
And if I run my query again, I see it in this table.
Right.
But it's not in this table. And it's not in this result. So why?
I think I know the answer.
Do you?
There's no items, right?
There's no items, right? And my query, most importantly, says I want the ones that had a sales order record that match. So if I don't, so that's why the easiest thing to do until you know any better is just to say left joins everywhere until things are slow, and then you go put regular joins in and things will get better. So if I go now sort this by that, I've got values over here, but then I've got nothing over here. And that's by design because you told it that I'm okay continuing to display results if I don't have any sales order item records to display.
Wow.
That's basically joins because you're telling the system what you're looking for, what the result should look like, but you're not really telling it like how it should like drive the programming for reading data off of the actual physical drives. That's why SQL is like a 4th generation language. Or is it 5th or 4th? I think it's 5th. No, I think it's 4th generation language, where it's like it's not the programming language that actually communicates with like hardware or like structure, but it's the language on top of the language. Because back in the day, this was designed for secretaries to write and produce reports for executives. I'm not joking, you know. Now there's a lot more layers on top of business, right? So this kind of reporting is just still within the tools that does it. But this is SQL, and it's pretty much, I mean, there's been changes in flavors to it and improvements over the years, but this has been kind of like the same structure for the last 30 years. And it reads like, that's why for me, when I'm listening to someone explain what they're looking for, like they're usually talking about what they want to see, and then because of my experience, I know how I need to get there. So it's like, well, I want the sales order, I want the total of the sales orders and customers. I'm like, okay, well, customer ID, and so total price, and okay, that's cool. Also customer name. Oh, of course. This thing sometimes gets buggy. Okay, cool. Like, and then I have some extra data. Okay, let me just delete these things. And so usually there's some side conversations that's happening, and you know, other things that are not relevant to the conversation, and people are talking about like, oh, okay, and they come back and and I was like, this is it? That's what you want?
See, that's so awesome to me.
And I mean, this is flawed. This is very flawed because this is just the sales order price. That's it. It's not even the data that's shipped. It's not even the data that's been packed. It's not even the data that's in inventory or whatever, right? That's where, you know, QuickBooks or accounting systems have that, you know, black and whiteness. That's why it makes making reporting on them a lot easier, because an invoice is an invoice. It's not a about to be invoice or about to be shipment or about to be credit, right? And Fishbowl is that whole shade of gray. Anyway, I got to cut it short because it's a really important meeting that I got to get to, but hopefully this has been helpful.
It has been very helpful.
We'll see if we can do this again. Maybe we can.
I would love to do it again.
Okay. But anyway, I think that's it for today, and we'll catch up later.
Gotcha. Thank you so much,
All right.
Israel. It was nice to meet you. Bye, Aleksa. You guys
All
have a
right,
good
bye. Thanks.
day.
Cheers. Bye.